violated the whole concept of our revolution and our Constitution.
Well, it's hour number 2 of Freedom Link Radio, everybody. I'm Joe Joseph, along with Gwen Caldwell, and we're talking tonight. Well, there's a whole host of things we're talking tonight. Hour number 1, we had Jim Babb from the Valley Forge Revolutionaries. Fantastic guest, and I can't wait to have him back on in the future. And we want to kick off hour number 2 with a bill you want to bring up, Gwen, and it's pretty important. Why don't we discuss it a little bit?
Okay, it's House Resolution HR 4103. It's the Canine Members of Armed Services Act, and right now all the canines that are involved in any kind of military action abroad are considered equipment, and so they're disposable. And so when our personnel come back, the dogs are just left. And so what this bill does is it provides funding for those dogs to be returned with their personnel and or to be adopted, and that kind of thing. And it also would provide for veterinary services and that kind of thing, so that they're not just left and abandoned in the field when our personnel are moved or come home or whatever. So what I would like to encourage everyone to do, post this on all your social media sites, have everyone start calling your House of Representative personalities and tell them that you want this bill supported, that these dogs are living things, they're not equipment, and you want them reclassified, and that you want this bill supported, and spread it far and wide. Do a YouTube video, make a poster and take a picture of it and use it for your Facebook profile picture, whatever, but get the word out and just shake the bones of those people in D.C. and make them step up to the plate and do the right thing on this deal. If they can afford, if they can afford to fund wars, and they can afford to do all the criminal stuff, bail out bankers who are nothing but criminals, and they can do all these kinds of things, then they can afford to do the right thing with these animals instead of just abandoning them and leaving them or shooting them or whatever the hell they choose to do with them. So that's kind of a thing. Again, it's HR 4103. It is the Canine Members of the Armed Services Act. Please take action. Thank you. Love, Gwen. Oh, that's all I have.
No, that's cool. I want to play a clip real quick, too, speaking of D.C., of Debbie Wasserman Schultz on CNN. Take a listen to this, Gwen, as she's talking about the health care bill and the individual mandate.
Tells the Supreme Court representing the Obama administration it is in fact a tax. It'll be administered by the IRS. It'll be collected on April 15th. Why can't you acknowledge that it is in fact a tax?
Because it's a penalty. It's not a tax. It's a penalty that if you decide to be irresponsible and continue to refuse to carry health insurance and make us all pay for your being irresponsible, then you can do that. You know, we're not going to actually require that you have health insurance. What we're saying is if you choose not to carry health insurance, then you will be assessed a penalty that will be assessed on your tax return, and that affects about 1% of Americans who choose to do that.
So Donald Verrilli, the Solicitor General, was wrong? He didn't tell the truth to the Supreme Court?
No, on the contrary. But the way we usually think of taxation, Wolf, is that taxation, as the IRS administers it, is collected on broad swaths and large categories of individuals.
Let me stop her there for a second, Gwen. This woman has a set. Let me tell you something. You're right, Debbie. It's not taxation. It's coercion. Is basically what you're doing. What you're telling people is they have to pay $600, and this is right now. This is at the start of it. $695 per person. So if you're in a family of 5, 6, you're paying close to $3,500 a year in a penalty if you choose not to take on health care. Now, what does this say to anybody, Gwen, who's into holistic medicine? There's no insurance for holistic medicine. So if you're into holistic medicine, now you got to pay a tax because you don't want to take part in the mainstream health system?
Joe, she's an asshat. She is the queen. She's got a tiara. She's a queen of asshats. And I want to tell you something. She's saying it's a penalty because if it's a tax, they have to throw out the whole damn law because it was originated in the Senate. And anything that is a tax has to be originated in the House of Representatives. And so now they're backpedaling to get out, to get everything it's worth out of it, to brainwash the mindless people that sit around sucking their entitlements. And it only affects 1% of the people. Bullshit. We're almost half of our population on food stamps, for God's sakes. What, is she freaking kidding me?
Yeah, I know. This is crazy banter coming from a crazy biatch. And that's really what she is, folks. Let's boil it down to basics. I mean, come on. But people need to understand that. Well, yeah, but I mean, this is straight up coercion. This is saying if you don't buy this, then you will be fined. You will be penalized. It's coercion, which is specifically forbidden.
Where is the constitutional authority?
Well, first of all, there is none.
I mean, that's like saying everybody in America, because Nike is good for your feet and we like the arches in their shoes, you must wear Nike shoes or you're going to be fined.
Right. That's right. Absolutely. And it was Antonin Scalia that actually went and used the broccoli analogy in the arguments. And because of that, that's how people got an idea. Wow, this is bad. If we allow the government to do this, then they can effectively tell us what to read, what to wear, what to drink, what to eat. They could stop nowhere. I mean, anything is on the table at that point, and that's one of the reasons why they said it is unconstitutional that the government cannot coerce you. But if you make it a tax, it's not coercion because it's part of the taxing powers of the federal government. Right. Yeah, that's just.
But if it's a taxing power, then it has to originate in the House of Representatives. And this bill did not originate in the House of Representatives. It originated in the Senate.
Now, one of the things. Hold on one second, because my wife Angie just made a great point. You know, anybody that's out there that wants to fight this, especially any attorneys, constitutional attorneys out there, consider a freedom of religion stance just based on what I was saying before with holistic medicine. I mean, think about that, Gwen. This directly impedes your ability to do this. I mean, this violates your religion.
Well, you can on so many levels. I mean, you could talk about that on so many levels, how it's wrong. But you know what? The American people, they're still sitting around twiddling their thumbs. I don't see any pitchforks and shovels. I don't see our big bad, militias standing up to do anything about it. I'm telling you, nothing's going to change in this country until the women get damn good and tired of this garbage, and we go and we do something because. Everybody just sits around and, they think if they sign a petition, that's going to make a difference. I'm telling you, people, they don't care how many petitions you sign. They put it in 513 right after they shred it.
Yeah, they can't.
They don't care.
They don't respect the law in a lawless society. Folks, we'll be right back. Don't go away. So much more to talk about. We'll listen to caller Jim from the Alex Jones Show when we come back after this.
The DependableVoice.com. The total solution, one-stop shop for your business telecommunications needs. Nationwide business class telecommunications services, providing voice and data, voice over internet, and hosted PBX. Dependable Voice is now offering the first month free for any voice over internet and hosted PBX services. Save up to 50% on your current phone bill and save thousands of dollars with no need to purchase PBX hardware. Hosted PBX and voice over internet services include free local and long-distance calling to the U.S., Canada, and Caribbean. Email to voicemail, follow-me services, multiple visual call reports, dynamic auto attendant, advanced ACD and call queue, unified voice and fax messaging, and much, much more. Plus, get your first month free with a minimum 3-phone system. Call Dependable Voice today at 1.
You know, folks, that Debbie Wasserman Schultz, she's really got a set. The government has no right to coerce you into anything. Regardless of how you may think or feel, or they think or feel, they cannot compel you to do anything. You have to give your rights away in order for that to happen. So just remember that as the events unfold. And, you know, one of the reasons why I think we're seeing an escalation of the police state is because people are getting damn pissed. But at the same time, there's other factors involved, like, for example, the economy. The economy's taking a sharp turn for the worse, not just in the United States, but in Europe and in China. People don't realize just how big a problem China is. They've built cities that are uninhabited. I mean, you want to talk about a real estate bubble, go to China. They have it is a mess. But anyway, there's this caller that called into the Alex Jones radio show, and I want to play it now because I think it gives some really good insight into what could be coming down the pipe. Listen to this.
But I'm glad that Jim from Missouri called in because he's a police officer. He says, and I think he sounded credible, who called in last week about what's already on the news, that they've got hundreds of giant armored vehicles and even tanks from the U.S. Army from Maryland rolling around all over the town. Regular Army, National Guard, all over the country. They've got weird military checkpoints run by the TSA. This is in the news. And I noticed that YouTube's of the interview, because we're also, filming it, got hundreds of thousands of views in different ways of him just being on a few minutes last week. And people were debating, they're making up tanks in St. Louis. Folks, it's all over the local TV there. This guy isn't a cop. Okay, well, let's just say he's not a cop. They tell people all the time, there will be an event in October, there will be in December. I've seen this for over a decade when they're doing these drills. They want to test and see what police are going to do, what military are going to do. I'm not quite sure why they do that. Well, I guess I am. It's to see how they react. Look, what we reported last week is now coming out in British news that indeed they're saying they do plan on there being a terror attack. It's Al-Qaeda flying planes into the Olympics. We were telling you that last week. Now it's in BBC, you name it today. But we're still the bad guys for having a whistleblower on talking about it. You see, this is what we're dealing with. So I think the caller is credible. And by the way, the next day, if your station only carries the Sunday show, we opened the phones to military and police and had more police from St. Louis call in and say, yeah, we're told something big's coming, and confirmed what he was saying. And I mean police with radios going off in the background. I mean, you could tell when a cop calls into the show. Incidentally, I got pulled over by a nice police officer Friday going to visit my grandmother, and he was very nice and let me go. Yeah. Anyway, side issue. Let's just go ahead and go to Jim, and then I'm going to go to Queensland, Australia. Daniel up next after that. But Jim, again, the interview got seen by hundreds of thousands, even after millions heard it on the radio show, and the people didn't go look up that there's tanks rolling around in St. Louis. They didn't go look up any of it. A small portion of them, but still said that nothing's even going on in St. Louis. What do you say to that?
Alex, thanks for having me on, man. It's funny that you say that. I had a list of 4 things I wanted to bring up with you real quick, and the first thing I wanted to say was my interview on your show. I went to the YouTube, looked it up. I was hoping to see a bunch of info warriors talking about coming together and maybe using this information I'm giving them and trying to do something constructive with it. And instead, I see a bunch of either government-paid trolls on there saying I'm faking that you put me up to this, or I see a bunch of, people who are awake, but they still don't want to be fully awake, and they want to say, okay, yeah, everything's real, but they're not going to bring down society. So that's great, because I want to talk to those people. I know you want to talk about the health care, but just let me say this and I'll get off. Alex, those type of people, I can't wait to kick down their door, because when I kick down their door, I know for sure they don't have guns. They don't have weapons, and those are the type of people that every day that I pull over a street patrol, they practically get out the car and get on their hands and knees and beg me not to give them a ticket or take them to jail. And let me tell you something, I'm a good guy, but there's a lot of my brethren that I work with that are just came back from Iraq, that are in secret Masons and all this kind of crap. And let me tell you something, when they kick down your door, they're not going to be like me. They're going to use your wife and your children, and they're going to do things to them that I can't even say on the radio show. So you should just pretend I'm not real. That's fine. But you've been warned, and Alex been saying stuff for 20 years. He's been right, but, we're wackos. But just let me say these other couple things.
But listen, there's a reason they swarmed that video. They are paid trolls. It's admitted that billions with a B. I mean, that's in the Washington, Cass Sunstein. It was in the Washington Post 6 years ago that Bush paid, what was it, $19 billion in 1 year for fake news and fake blogs. I mean, they were paying radio hosts $250,000 apiece just to have federal takeover of schools with the No Child Left Behind. Armstrong, Williams, all of it. So
finish saying this, and I'll get off.
Yeah, go ahead.
I know you're busy. I just want to finish up the story because I kind of broke down last time, and I'm sorry I did that. But
you got the floor. Tell folks what's going on with the tanks right now. Tell folks what you've been hearing.
The neighborhood that I'm specifically, I've been practicing in, I don't know if you know this, but there's 2 big corporations in St. Louis, and I think they run St. Louis, and a lot of the people that occupy this neighborhood work at these corporations.
Monsanto?
And Anheuser-Busch. Monsanto and Anheuser-Busch. And these executives work there. And not only, listen to this, I've been told that these neighborhoods that I'll be guarding, they probably won't even be occupied when this collapse, because these people we already shipped to a secure location. I think it's underground in the Merrimack Caverns, but hey, I'm just probably a conspiracy nut. The last thing, I just want to move to another point, because the drill ended Friday. They're not doing that anymore, but the tanks are still here, people. Alan Watt, I think he should be on once a week, maybe, just maybe for 2 segments. People need to hear you and Alan Watt go at it. I love your banter.
No, I hear you, but listen, the reason so many trolls, it was still about only 20%. I mean, because you'll see the votes, 95% agree with us on, say, a YouTube, but then you'll see all the comments attacking us because they're paid. We have tracked their IP addresses on InfoWars because we can go in and, they don't even hide that it's out of big corporations, Department of Defense, foreign governments. It's come out that if you criticize Katrina, the Department of Defense would put 100 bloggers, military, on there attacking your site, including with cyber attacks. So again, we're not attacking the military, we're attacking the fact that it's being used domestically like this. They're scared of your phone call. That's why they were swarming and attacking that, to make you feel like, because they're force multipliers, that you're alone. It's like Tokyo Rose.
And you know what? What's even more interesting, Gwen, about all this is you have to wonder what in the heck are they planning in order, because we're seeing these drills pop up in a lot of major cities now. And the other thing that kind of took me aback, it didn't really take me aback, but the other day there were like 50 students that protested Eric Holder outside of the White House, or I think it was right outside the White House, yeah. And the Secret Service says, oh, look at there, suspicious package, and they go and they break it up. Obviously they're scared. And my thing is people see this. Why aren't they more vocal?
Exactly. And my thing is, Congress held Eric Holder in contempt. That's a crime. Contempt is a crime.
That's right.
So,
Hold that thought, Gwen. We'll talk about Eric Holder when we come back from break. Don't go away, folks. We'll talk about what's coming up, what we see coming down the pipe when we come back. Day of about 50 students. And how convenient it was that the Secret Service found that suspicious package right in between or in their midst. Isn't it, Gwen? They're afraid. They're afraid of what that could spark. Isn't that right?
I believe so. I think that they know. I think they're always checking the temperature, and I think they see that across the board. They've created a problem that's gotten out of hand now, and they're not going to be able to control it, and they're going to have to call the military in to deal with us because they've gotten out of control. And time and time again, they violated the oath of office. They violated the Constitution. They're criminals. They and people are waking up, and people are getting hungry, and people are getting kicked out of their homes, and they're getting tired of it.
Yes, we are reaching that point. I remember a long time ago I said, I don't think that you're going to see anything, and you're going to see lethargy because people still have a lot to lose. And even today, people still have a lot to lose. But I'll tell you what, it's fast approaching that point where people will have nothing to lose, and their backs will be against the wall, and their kids will be starving. And the last thing that you want is to have your kids starve, and you'll do anything to feed them. And that's the thing that I see coming down the pipe, and I'll tell you why, Gwen. You got three things unfolding at the exact same time. You've got the United States, and the manufacturing numbers came out, folks, and they were abysmal, absolutely abysmal. We retracted for the first time in 3 years since 2009 as far as our manufacturing base. We had been, I don't want to call it expanding, but let's just say we were treading water. And that kind of helped out. But you have Europe. Now, Europe is just an absolute mess. And, of course, they all came together last week and they sung Kumbaya around the table, and they said, well, the ECB is going to be able to loan to the banks over there directly, and because of that, they get this money. We'll recapitalize the banks, and everything will be just fine. Yeah, except for the fact that it's just a drop in the bucket. And it's
they lied.
It's
they lied.
Yeah, well, it's it's
not going to work.
Well, no, it's just one more actual looting of the public, which is what we're seeing over there. But the big thing is the one that people aren't paying attention to, and that's China. See, China in all of this has been eerily silent because their numbers aren't so good either. As a matter of fact, they're looking at their exports have actually started to decrease because Europe is not buying as much. They're in financial decline, as well as the United States. I don't know anybody out there that can tell me for a certainty that they're doing better than they were 4 years ago or even, 10 years ago. I can't, or even last year. I just can't see that they're doing any better. I mean, you have to really... It doesn't take a rocket scientist to see that we're still struggling, that whole summer of recovery and all that BS, that bunk, was exactly that. It was bunk. But China not only has that, they've been propping up their currency or actually keeping it devalued. And as a result, it's caused massive inflation over there. They're running inflation, and it's increasing fairly rapidly. And then to compound matters, everybody remembers the 2008 real estate bubble when that burst and the damage that it did to the United States. Well, China has a real estate bubble that dwarfs the United States. It makes the United States look like, I don't know, dopey dwarf. And it's like yeah, it is, and it's like they're like Supreme Allied Commander Witch of Doom. Because seriously, I'm telling you right now, they have whole cities that are unoccupied. They've just been building, but nobody's buying.
Well, and I read an article a couple weeks ago, a blog or something, about how pissed off China is at the United States, and because their market, their employment's down because the manufacturing's down, because the United States keeps artificially inflating the economy.
Right. Absolutely right. But to make matters worse is if these things all come to a head at the same time, or even if it's just one or the other, it really doesn't matter. It's going to cause a global crisis. I mean, we are so connected globally these days that any time any one of these major countries or organizations like the EU, like China, like the United States, once they start to deteriorate, they kind of all go down the tubes together. Everybody's tied at the hip. So what's going to happen, Gwen, and this is what I see, this is going to be their way of ushering in that one world currency. This is the way I see it unfolding, is that in the end, you're going to have a bank holiday. And these bank holidays are going to cause massive disruptions within the population centers. It just only makes sense. I mean, when you start talking about bank holidays, people not being able to withdraw money, the devaluation of currency or the institution of a new currency, when people can't buy food for their kids, you're going to see violence. And what better way to explain that? I mean, outside of a planet hurtling towards the Earth, or maybe, big solar flare, outside of something celestial. All of this planning, I kind of see geared towards the deterioration of individual sovereign currencies and the institution of a cashless one world currency where they can control everyone's purchasing power.
Well, and the thing that I find so interesting about that is that they can't afford to do the right thing for the economy. They can't legalize hemp so that we have a booming farming and manufacturing base in this country again. But they can buy bombs and go make up make-believe wars, and they can afford that. Any thinking person can do the math. I mean, a second grader could do the math and figure out that there's a better way to do this. And I'm telling you, people, food is going to be an issue. Get food, because it's going to be an issue. And I would highly recommend that you get organic and heritage seeds, and you get the hand tools that you're going to need to put your food in, and get pots where you can grow food inside, whether that be carrots, green beans, potatoes, herbs, lettuce, whatever. I'm telling you, I've been on the radio for 2 years saying food's going to be an issue. And sure. I tell you what, I think come this fall, that big giant bitch slap is going to hit a few heads in this country.
Well, I hate putting dates to things. So that's one thing that is very difficult, because it never ends up being what you think it is or how it's going to be. But one thing is for sure, Gwen, when you get all that food, you're going to have a way to defend it. So make sure that you invest in those precious metals like brass and lead and cold steel.
Well, Joe, the thing about the food is that the cropland is burning up in Colorado, and now what wasn't burning up because they wouldn't allow the water to flow now is on fire. Central California, which produces 25% of the world's fruit, nuts, and vegetables, is a desert because they won't let the water flow down the San Joaquin Aquifer.
Unbelievable.
So we've got drought all over in this area where I am. Crops are burning up. And then you've got all that farmland that got flooded last year that they can't do a damn thing with. So no corn, no wheat, no nothing's going into that land that was flooded along the Missouri and Mississippi last year. It does not take rocket science to figure out there's going to be food issues.
Yeah, absolutely.
And I don't have to give you a date, but I can tell you at the end of this growing season, when the food isn't there, there's going to be a food problem.
I agree with you. We'll come back for the last segment of the broadcast, folks. So don't go away. We'll talk about the IRS and a little audit they're about to go through. We'll be right back.
Woo.
Stay tuned for the Mabe Russell Archives. Fantastic show, kind of paved the way for this type of radio. So that comes on at 12 o'clock Eastern Daylight Time on the Orion Talk Radio Network. Joe Joseph here and Gwen Caldwell. Next story of the day, IRS hit with audit for mismanagement and fraud. Let's listen to the news piece on this because this is a very interesting story indeed.
Producing great dry reds.
Of course, that would be after the mandatory commercial that plays that I had skipped to begin with, and then all of a sudden it rears its ugly head one more time. Don't you hate that, Gwen?
I do.
I can't stand that.
Wait, hey, Joe.
Yeah.
Did you hear about Sarkozy?
Here we go. I certainly did.
Tonight, auditing the IRS as the tables are now turned on the agency. Eyewitness News has now learned it's now the Internal Revenue Service being audited after 13 investigators exposed some massive fraud. Our investigative reporter Bob Siegel shows us how new allegations and a brand new investigation are now sending shockwaves throughout the entire agency.
I know, you're a wild man.
Just like the guy next door. But that guy might just be the IRS's worst nightmare.
You're the guy who's busting the IRS. Yeah.
Howard Antelis has worked inside the IRS for years, and he's seen a lot.
I'm horrified and ashamed and embarrassed by what I've seen. It's not supposed to be like this.
Howard is a tax examiner at this IRS processing facility in Austin, Texas. This is where the IRS decides whether to issue an ITIN, an individual taxpayer identification number. Millions of undocumented workers apply for an ITIN so they can file tax returns. Paying taxes is required by law, even for workers who are here illegally. But 13 investigators discovered the ITIN system is plagued by abuse and fraud. We showed how many undocumented workers use ITINs to get big tax credits and refunds they're not entitled to.
Wait a second. It looks like something's not right here.
If the opportunity is there and they can give it to him, why not take advantage of it?
We showed how millions of undocumented workers get their ITIN applications approved using phony documents. Documents that these IRS workers say they can't even read.
I can't read Spanish, so I couldn't even read it all in Spanish.
And we showed how the problem has grown out of control.
We're talking about $4 billion per year.
After seeing our investigations, Howard contacted 13 investigators to say all of that is just the beginning.
We were being told by upper management to ignore fraud and to assign ITIN numbers, and it's a license to steal when you allow that.
When it comes to fraudulent ITIN applications, Howard says managers at the IRS actually tell tax examiners they should look the other way, even when they find clear signs of criminal activity.
It's just a joke what we accept. It's just been, we'll take anything.
For example, Howard received a stack of ITIN applications, all for children attending the same school in South Carolina. When he researched that school, he discovered it didn't even exist. So he told his bosses.
Look at this. This is fraud.
But he says IRS managers ordered him to approve the applications anyway. Howard's convinced he granted ITINs for kids who aren't even real.
We're not supposed to look into anything. We're not supposed to examine anything. It's like a assembly line. It's just get it out of here. boom, 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 get it out of here, and don't worry about the fraud. Fraud slows us down.
After years of reporting that fraud directly to his bosses with no success, this tax examiner decided to take drastic action.
I've been working for the federal government for 23 years. I signed an ethical standard of conduct when I went to work there that says, if you see fraud, you need to report it. And I tried, and I tried, and I tried. Couldn't get anywhere, and so...
You decided enough was enough.
Mm-hmm. And I went into an office, quiet office, and I started making phone calls.
Those phone calls went here, to the office of the Inspector General in Washington. The IG's office confirms it then dispatched auditors to Texas to interview Howard and dozens of other tax examiners. That's when auditors learned IRS employees were actually encouraged to ignore fraud.
They went, what? It's shocking that something like this could have gone on for as long as it has.
The Inspector General's investigation has taken more than a year. A final audit will be released this summer, and it will give further proof of what Eyewitness News first exposed last month, that millions of undocumented workers can get ITINs by filing fraudulent paperwork, and employees at the IRS lack the proper support, training, and tools to prevent it.
That's where all the fraud is. The fraud is in the fake notary stamps and the fake documents, which we've been accepting. 90% of the people there have no idea if a fraudulent document hit them in the face.
That is about to change. Just days after our last investigation, the IRS sent senior officials from Washington to the I-10 processing center in Texas. And now, facing growing pressure, the IRS has announced it will begin cracking down on I-10 fraud. Tax examiners are now getting more training. And to get an I-10, undocumented workers will have to prove their identity through original certified documents. Notarized photocopies, which are easy to forge, will no longer be accepted.
For the first time in years, I have some hope that this might get fixed.
Simply speaking out could end up saving taxpayers billions, but at a personal cost. Just a few days ago, after Howard met with me, the IRS slashed his job performance rating, which will affect his paycheck. Howard believes it's retaliation for blowing the whistle on his managers, and he wonders what might happen next.
Are you nervous? Are you afraid?
A little bit, but not really. I guess they could try to fire me, but I don't think they will. All I'm interested in is seeing this get fixed. We've been allowing the U.S. taxpayer to get robbed for years now, and those days appear to be over.
13 Investigates has learned the IRS will spend the next 6 months reviewing all areas of the I-10 program, and by the end of the year, it will issue more rules to further reduce fraud.
Oh, boy, hey, look at them.
Woohoo!
They got a kick in the pants. That's pretty cool. I mean, considering the fact that they rob us all the time. Yeah.
I'm kidding.
I mean, they do. They literally do. I mean, think about this. I mean, how egregious is that? Here you are, you're a civil servant, and you're telling people to overlook fraud. And in some cases, it's up to 90% of the time, it's a fraudulent document. Holy crap. I mean, it makes me sick, Gwen. It really does.
Well, you know, they searched Sarkozy's office in his house today, too, and there's a lot of stuff like that going on. I think the gig is up.
I hope
for a whole bunch.
I hope it is, but I've lost my faith in the system because of the fact that this lawlessness is allowed to just continue unabated, and they're doing these things now without any fear of recourse, and we don't have any form of redress because it's been taken away from us. So what do? You know? And that's the things that we'll be talking about on Thursday evening as we're getting close to coming to a close. Any final statements as we close the show out there, Gwen?
Happy Independence Day.
Happy Independence.
God bless America.
Well, let me just say this. I truly do hope and pray that the American people pull their heads out of their butts and see that we're really not independent at all. That the independence that was fought so hard for so many years ago and how much blood was spilt to gain our independence and to give us, you know, the human race, the first country of its kind to where each and every person born in this country was a sovereign unto him or herself. First time in human history. And I'll tell you what, the founding fathers would be turning over in their grave right now.
I think they're doing a merry-go-round in their graves already. Jeez, it's unbelievable.
Absolutely. So just think about that as you celebrate with your fireworks and your hot dogs and your hamburgers. Just how independent are you the next time you get stopped at a checkpoint? Or they look for your papers. They want your papers. Or you're being coerced or compelled to purchase a good or a service. Or they take your guns away. How independent are you when the CPS shows up?
Home of the brave.
The CPS shows up at your door because you homeschool your children. Just how independent are you? So when you're firing off those fireworks, think about that. Because we're not independent at all. As a matter of fact, we've totally lost focus with what freedom really means. And what it really means is respect and personal responsibility. Respect your neighbor and be personally responsible for your own actions or inactions. And that is what liberty and independence is. And that's what we do not have in this country. Folks, we're out of time for tonight. So thank you for tuning in. Again, the next broadcast is Thursday at 10 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time. So until then, thanks so much, Gwen, for hanging out with me tonight.
You bet.
And we will see you on Thursday evening, folks.